Hey folks, and welcome back. This is my next part of the level 60 player help, the Jedi Guardian. And the Jedi Guardian is probably the most canon character you're going to find in Knights of the Old Republic. There's a lot of hallmarks of the old Knights of the Old Republic games, numbers 1 and 2. Story-wise, they feel very canon. By the way, the end of their story is one of the best in the games, the original 1 through 50 story. So if there was one character I would say you might want to actually do their full story for before hitting this point, I would say the Jedi Knight is going to definitely feel probably the most rewarding story-wise. So if you do like story, and you do like, lightsaber action, you've always wanted to be Luke Skywalker, do the Jedi Knight and be a Guardian. It definitely feels like fantastic to do so. Anyway, if you did get to this point though, and you did want to just jump right into a Guardian, let me show you a few things to kind of get you started. What you're seeing here, I didn't show this in my last video. This is the standard tutorial setup of what they'll give you if you just start with the tutorial, which I think is kind of a crappy way to start. I mean, yeah, alright, it gives you kind of some basics, but there's no particular order, rhyme, or reason to how these things are set up. Except if you see the full hotbars, and you won't if you're in the tutorial mode. So let me show you how to turn that off really quick. I just hit escape, I click disable tutorial, and voila, everything's back. Now, if you are used to seeing the setups, you kind of know what these moves are, but if this is all brand new to you, what I'm going to do is, first things, I'm going to pause this, I'm going to change the configuration of my HUD to one that I have preset, and then I'm going to go ahead and rearrange all the moves on my hotbar, and then I'm going to go basically my 1 through 10 keys and my second hotbar keys, and I'll show you what I placed where and why, to give you kind of some ideas of where you can be placing things, but more importantly, I am showing you like the good moves from the chaff. The Jedi Guardian has a huge toolbox in his arsenal, but not everything is really beneficial all the time, so I'm going to try to, do all the hard work of getting all the junk out. Alright, so give me just a second, I'm going to rearrange this and we'll unpause and come right back. And we're back. Hey guys, so as you can see, I changed my HUD to my configuration that I really like. Again, use what works for you. That's all I'm going to say about that. Awesome, so down here we have my hotbars, and I'm just going to go left to right, 1 through 10, and we'll talk about what we got here. First up is Sundering Strike. This is your main I don't want to say energy. They call it focus, but just think that as a Jedi Guardian, unlike the Gunslinger that you just saw in my previous video, there's some classes that start with a full bar of energy and work their way down. The Jedi Guardian is actually one that works his way up. So this is your main way of building a focus, plus it also sunders the target and puts an armor debuff on him. Very useful, very handy. Definitely one of the raid utilities that you bring because it's automatically in your rotation. Don't have to think about it. Next up, I have Overhead Slash, which is another core part of the mechanics to the Jedi Guardian. By the way, I forgot to mention, they give you the Jedi Guardian in Vigilance spec just by default. That is a great spec. I highly recommend just sticking with it. It's definitely my favorite Jedi Knight spec, anyway, so I was kind of thrilled that that's the one that they just give you by default. Here's kind of the core parts of it. So Sundering Overhead Slash hits a target really hard, but then it also opens them up for more damage. There's like a window of opportunity for a few seconds after that hits. You can read about it here in the utilities. By the way, always read all your utilities and combat proficiencies. Read. That will tell you how to play that character a lot better. Alright, up next we have Plasma Brand. Plasma Brand is awesome! It is a damage over time, plus it also refreshes the cooldown of Blade Dance. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll Saber Throw, Force Leap in, with the energy I already have there, just go right into Blade Dance, pop Plasma Brand, and bam. Or throw in Overhead Slash first, then Blade Dance, then Plasma Brand. You get the idea. While you're doing all that, this guy's going to pop, Blade Storm. Blade Storm is a pretty standard move for Jedi Knights, whether they're a Guardian or a Sentinel, but it has varying amounts of help depending on what stance you're in and what class you're playing. In this particular case, it's actually very useful. It's going to put another damage over time on bad guys, and the more damage over time you have in a Vigilance spec, the more damage you're going to be doing to your target. So that's good. We also have Vigilant Thrust. This is a great move. It's going to spread the dots that come from Plasma Brand and Blade Storm to all your bad guys in the surrounding range. And it's also on a very fast cooldown and hits really hard. You're going to want this one on your hotbar for sure. Dispatch is a finisher. It can only be used on a target below 30%. But you're going to wonder, like, why do I have that on my 6 key? Well, I'm glad you asked. In the utilities, you can grab some utilities that'll let you use it regardless of health. And so that way you can force sleep in on a guy and use it right at the start of a fight. It also has a proc in the actual natural rotation that'll also make it light up as well, so you can be using it in the battle. So it actually goes from just being a finisher to a pretty large staple of the rotations. Also, like I said, Blade Dance. Have it somewhere. I have it on one of my mouse keys because that's just where I'm comfortable with it. If you don't have a mouse that's configured that way, you may want that on your main hotbar, but have it somewhere. It's good, really good. All right, next up, I do have an open spot for 7 in case I want to move anything there. You're going to see some holes here. I usually fill that up with some other stuff. Right now, I'm just kind of giving you the core, the meat. You can choose what you want to put anywhere you want, but I just want to kind of filter out all the junk and let you kind of see like what the core part of these moves are. I do like force stasis. Not everybody else does, but there's going to be some times where it can be almost a secondary interrupt for a lot of bad guys. Pretty useful. Also generates some focus. The guys who are immune to stuns and knockbacks and stuff like that, you won't really see much of a benefit for, but it can be really good on a pinch on a low-level bad guy. Force push is just that. It's a push. However, in this game, if you've never played an MMO that has this kind of physics engine, there's a lot of ledges in this game that people can literally just fall straight over. And if you set things up right, you can take a really high-level bad guy who doesn't have immunity to pushback and throw them right over a cliff, saving you all the trouble of killing them. It's cheap. It's amazingly fun. It never gets old. Use it somewhere. Next up, I have Combat Focus. It just generates a little extra focus. However, there's also utility that'll let that also be a stun breaker and a CC breaker. So I do have that up here. Next up is Saber Ward. It's on a really long cooldown, but it's one of your better defensives. Tanks use it a lot. It's definitely a good, oh crap, I don't know what's coming at me and damaging me, but I definitely would like to defend against it. Mostly for ranged attacks like blasters and such, but it also will absorb 25% of force and tech attacks. Okay. Over here I have Resolute. That's a CC breaker, very important. I always have mine on my equal sign. I always have it close by. This particular class of character though, he gets a few different moves that can all be used to break CCs, including, like I said, Combat Focus. There's another one called Mad Dash or Blade Rush, or I can't remember what they call it here on this side. But it just basically dashes you forward, and that can also be spec to break CCs too, which is really important if you do some raiding. Next up, on my lower bar, I have Force Kick, which is my interrupt. Always have an interrupt, guys. Always. I have Blade Dance, obviously, which I mentioned before, and then I have these two interesting guys. So normally, I've set up some defensives over here on this right-hand side, except for like the core ones I use, and these are the core ones that I use. The first up is called Focus Defense. If you don't know much about it, here's basically how it works, the short version. Once you get under 60% health, you pop Focus Defense, and then damage you take refills your health bar. Okay? There's another move you have called Inure, which boosts your overall health pool for a very short amount of time. Those two together can be a really nice game changer for a really bad situation, for where you are taking a lot of damage from a lot of different sources and you are, near death or in trouble. If you pop both of those in sequence, you're going to increase the size of your health pool, buying you a little bit of time, and fill it almost all the way up to full, if not full, immediately. So those two work in pretty well combination, but I don't always need a Nur, and so what I'll end up doing is I'll probably just use Focus Defense. And if you're on the move, running around killing stuff as a Jedi Vigilance Guardian, you're going to notice that you can pull one right after the other. If you have a good companion, I just leave them in DPS stance, and I just become, a wrecking machine. It's really fun. Also, Focus Defense in that case, instead of having a stop and heal, I'll just use that after a few pulls or such, and then my next pull I go back up to full health, and I just repeat the cycle. You can tear through these chapters in the story with almost without ever having to stop to heal if you use it right. Next up is Saber Reflect. This is an awesome move. If you're a tank, it's great. If you're not a tank, it's great. If you have a lot of guys shooting at you, you can pop Saber Reflect, and for 3 whole seconds, you're reflecting all that damage back at those attackers. Jumping right in the middle of a bunch of bad guys and having them all shoot at you, and then you're just blasting all their blaster bolts back at them is hilariously fun. Also, I would mention that there's a utility that'll add a few extra seconds to it in here, so that it can last a little bit longer. definitely worth it. It's also on a short cooldown. It's only 1 minute, so it's definitely worth having. Next up, I have Force Leap and Saber Throw. These two work in combination. They build a lot of rage, or on this side it's called focus, right out of the gate. And the best part is, if you take the right utility over here, I believe it is this one. Nope. Force Sweep, it's one of these. Here we go. When you exit combat, the active cooldowns of Force Sleep, Combat Focus, and Saber Throw are reduced by 100%. What that means is, you finish battle, you can use these right away. Simple as that. So you can chain these up a lot. I'll usually hit Saber Throw, Force Leap in, I have a ton of rage, and I'm already starting out that fight. As soon as those guys are dead, I just do it again. And you just chain one right after another after another. It's awesome. Next up, I have Introspection, which is actually my energy and health recovery move. And then over here I have Guardian Leap. Guardian Leap is kind of interesting because it's mostly a tanking move. But here's kind of a cool thing. If you're just trying to travel fast, you can tap a friendly target and just hit Guardian Leap and leap over to them. There's a few times in the game and in the plot where that just saves you some locomotion time. It's on a really quick cooldown. Sometimes also too, if your companion's in trouble, you can pop that. I just like having it there. It's not, it's kind of optional, but it's one I do want to point out because it's kind of a cool move. Alright, that also works on people in high places. There's a few places on the fleet where there's some achievements where you can tap on a guy in the Cartel Bazaar and then zip up to him, which is awesome. Alright, and then over here on the left side, I'm just going to go through these quick. I have Allure, Freezing Force, and Awe. Awe I pretty much almost never use because anytime they take damage they immediately breaks. Freezing Force is more of a PvP thing. I just kind of put him over here to put him somewhere. Down here I have the moves that I'm not using, which is Strike, Riposte, and Slash. You might see Riposte light up. Optional. You can put on on a key somewhere and then just hit it when it's available. But it's not really doing much for your rotation in this spec. Really, these 6 keys here and this 7th one down here are pretty much the focus of this entire spec, plus Saber Throw and Force Leap. These really, honestly, are not really doing you much good. When you saw me talk about the Gunslinger, you saw me use my regular blaster bolts, and I keep that on 1 key. You're not really going to need that with Vigilance. You're almost never out of rage or focus in this spec, so it's really just not something I use. And Slash is pretty much worthless in this spec, so I just put them all over here, but honestly, you could just take them off a hotbar too. Heroic Moment, don't worry about that. Guard, Challenging Call, and Taunt, those are all tanky things. I would recommend just kind of leaving those alone. One little note is if you do jump into a bunch of bad guys and you hit Challenging Call and then hit Saber Reflect, you're going to be sure that all of them are chasing down you, and that's going to do a tremendous amount of damage. But really, these are tank moves in here. You don't really need them. Over here, I have my my class buff, Force Might. It also has my other classes that I've unlocked in there. And then I have my stances. For this, you're going to be in Xian form. That makes you move a little faster, and all attacks that cost 1 focus for fun, 1 focus when used. Anyway, the other stance you have is Suresu. That's the tanking stance. Just make sure you're not in tanking stance while you're in Vigilance DPS. That's it, guys. I know that took a long time to kind of go through, but now you kind of have a grind on what your hotbar should have, potentially. The order may change, but these are your core moves. Alright, guys? Alright, I hope you're having a great time watching these videos. If you like what you see and you want to join in the game, please do so. I'm putting a new player referral link down at the bottom. Feel free to click on that, like my page, subscribe, and we will see you next time, guys.